Physics and the organizing team of this virtual science lecture series, which is organized by Department of Physics, School of Physical and Chemical Sciences, Central University of South Bihar, Gaya. I would like to thank all the online participants for showing their interest and taking part in the sixth lecture of this series. Today, we have the pleasure of having Dr. Isha Rajput of Indian Navy with us. Let us first welcome her. She will speak on X-ray and CT physics, our armamentarium in COVID crisis. This lecture should attract huge attention from the technologically oriented student and young faculties. I welcome you, Dr. Isha, from bottom of my heart. Dr. Isha is a medical practitioner. She is radio diagnosis in Indian Navy at Port Blair, Andaman and Nicobar, India. She did her MBBS from AFMC Pune with 11 distinction and 9 gold medals. MD from INHS Ashwani, Mumbai, and DNB in radio diagnosis. She is well known in her field of medical sciences. She has authored 3 bestseller books on radiology. During her education, she topped regularly in the classes. Again, I welcome you, Dr. Isha, and we are really grateful to you for accepting our request of delivering today's lecture, sharing time with us for your busy schedule. As I have always mentioned before each lecture, that our speakers are internationally renowned and real gems of their area. Therefore, they do not need any introduction. However, for curious participants, we have already uploaded her short CV on the Science Lecture website and Facebook. Before I would like to request our speaker or participant, I would like to mention here that at the end of the lecture, after vote of thanks, our coordinators, they will announce information related to the certificate issued by the Science Lecture series. With these few words, I would like to humbly request Dr. Isha Rajput to please deliver her talk on X-ray and CT physics, our armamentarium in COVID crisis. Dr. Isha Rajput, please.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to all listeners. I am Dr. Isha Rajput, consultant radiologist at Port Blair, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. At the outset, I thank Professor Venkatesh for giving me this opportunity to interact with you all. This slide is the first slide. It introduces me and it is important because it has my email ID and phone number. It would be great to get some feedback for this lecture. Currently, I am passionate about 2 things, radio diagnosis and academics. So find your calling and when you do so, it will be ecstatic. Towards this end, I have authored 3 books on radiology, which is as flashed. Starting with today's lecture, X-ray and CT physics are armamentarium in COVID crisis. This is the flow of my presentation. First, we will read about X-ray production and image formation, followed by image formation in CT. Thereafter, COVID-19, what we know about the ongoing pandemic, radiology and its role in diagnosis of COVID-19, and conclusion remarks. Starting with the first topic, X-ray production and image formation. X-rays are a part of electromagnetic spectrum with wavelength 1 to zero point 0.1 angstrom for diagnostic X-rays, and for therapeutic X-rays it is 0.1 to 10 to the power minus 4 angstrom. The discovery of X-rays in 1895 was the beginning of a revolutionary change in our understanding of the physical world. William C. Roentgen, he was interested in cathode rays and in assessing their range outside of charged tubes. In the winter of the year of his 50th birthday and the year following his appointment to the leadership of University of Würzburg, Rector William Conrad Roentgen noticed a barium platinocyanide screen fluorescing in his laboratory as he generated cathode rays in a Crookes tube some distance away. Leaving aside for a time his duties to the university and to his students, Rector Roentgen spent the next sometime before Christmas, he brought his wife into his laboratory and they emerged with a photograph of the bones in her hand and of the ring on her finger. The Würzburg Physico-Medical Society was the first to hear of the new rays that could penetrate the body and photograph the bones. On 28 December 1895, Roentgen gave his preliminary report über neun Neue Art von Strahlen to the president of Würzburg Physical Medical Society, accompanied by the experimental radiographs and by the image of his wife's hand. The image here shows the initial instrumentation that he used to read X-rays. By the New Year's Day, he had sent the printed report to physicist friends across Europe. January saw X-ray mania. Roentgen acclaimed as the discoverer of a new medical miracle. The first Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to William Conrad Roentgen for the discovery of X-rays. However, noble enough, he refused to seek any patents or proprietary claims on the X-rays, even eschewing eponymous discrimination of his discovery and its applications. A few words about the properties of X-rays, which many of you must already be knowing. X-rays travel in straight lines. They are not deflected by electric or magnetic field. They have a high penetrating power. Photographic films are blackened by X-rays. Fluorescent materials glow when X-rays are directed at them. Ionization of a gas results when an X-ray beam is passed through it. Now we are going to read about components of X-ray tube. X-ray tube, X-rays are produced by energy conversion when a fast-moving stream of electrons is suddenly decelerated in the target anode of an X-ray tube. So what an X-ray tube does is that it provides an environment for X-ray production by two processes, Bremsstrahlung and characteristic radiation, which we will read about in further slides. The classic X-ray tube has three main components: electron source or cathode, target or anode for X-ray production, and a high potential difference maintained between them to accelerate the electrons. The X-ray tube, the basic mechanism is shown in this diagram. It is made of Pyrex glass. The two electrodes, cathode and anode, are sealed together in vacuum. If any gas were present inside the tube, the electrons accelerated towards the anode would collide with gas molecules and produce secondary electrons. This would cause wide variation in tube current and energy of X-rays produced. The cathode is made of tungsten. Tungsten is used as the cathode material because of following properties. It has a high atomic number, 74, and therefore more efficient at production of X-rays. A high melting point of 3370 degrees centigrade. It has good ductility and can be drawn into thin wires with little tendency to vaporize, good absorption of heat and rapid dissipation, all these factors leading to long life expectancy. Now, four processes are important to read about while production of X-rays. All of these occur at the cathode end. On application of heat, the tungsten atoms absorb thermal energy and some electrons acquire enough energy to move a small distance away from the surface of the metal. This is known as thermionic emission. The electron cloud surrounding the filament produced by thermionic emission is called Edison effect. The collection of these negatively charged electron cloud in the vicinity of the filament is called space charge. The tendency of this space charge to limit the emission of more electrons from the cathode or filament is called the space charge effect. Now, the electrons that are produced at the cathode are accelerated through high potential difference and then they hit the anode target. Now we read how the X-rays are produced from the anode target. Before we go on to this process, we have to know the structure of atom, which I am sure all of you must already be knowing, but one revision is not that harmful. So the structure of atom. This atom consists of a central nucleus, which consists of protons and neutrons. The protons are positively charged and neutrons are neutral. Electrons are negatively charged. The atomic number refers to number of protons. Atomic mass refers to number of protons added to the neutrons. The electron orbits are there around the nucleus. Each electron has negative energy. These electrons move in spherical shells around the nucleus, each shell having a fixed value of energy for its electrons. When some extra energy is given to the electron to raise its energy to zero so that it becomes free, this is known as binding energy. So when these excited and accelerated electrons from the cathode hit the anode, any of these four flashed processes can occur. Excitation of an outer orbit electron, ionization of an outer orbit electron, ionization followed by emission of characteristic X-ray. This is also known as characteristic radiation. And the fourth process is Bremsstrahlung or breaking radiation production, that is general radiation. The higher the atomic number of the target, greater will be the efficiency of production of X-rays. We will read in detail about two more processes, Bremsstrahlung and characteristic radiation. First, we read about Bremsstrahlung. What happens and how are the steps in which the X-rays are produced? This is the radiation given off by electrons as they are attracted by the strong electric field near the high proton number nuclei. The process of breaking radiation takes part in following steps. The electron passes near to the nucleus. It is attracted by the nucleus. It slows down and loses its kinetic energy. This loss is converted to X-rays. Electrons in this manner can undergo multiple reactions before coming to rest, and hence Bremsstrahlung is a continuous spectrum of variable energies. Most of the radiation produced has little energy and appears as heat. Another schematic diagram showing the general radiation or Bremsstrahlung. We must note that the electron never comes out of the shell, it only passes near to the nucleus and loses its kinetic energy, which is converted into X-rays. Characteristic radiation. Characteristic radiation results when the electrons bombarding the target eject electrons from the inner orbit of target atom. This process occurs in following steps. Follow the diagram. There is an accelerated incoming electron which hits the atom, tungsten atom. High energy electron bombards the target tungsten atom. Binding energy of a K-shell electron in tungsten atom is 70 kilo electron volt. And the L shell has a binding energy of 11 kilo electron volt. These are all negative energies. So this high energy electron gives its energy to K shell electron and frees it from the atom. The K shell electron is dislodged. It now becomes a free electron and the atom becomes a positive ion. This is an unstable state. So in the process to return to its normal state, another electron from L shell jumps to fill this vacancy in K shell. In the process, it gives out X-rays which have energy equal to the binding energy difference of L shell and K shell. Thus, characteristic radiation produced by tungsten from L shell to K shell has an energy of 70 minus 11, 59 kilo electron volt. Such transitions can also occur from M shell to K shell, but this and similar transition will not produce X-rays. These will only produce low energy radiations that can appear as heat. Below 70 kVp, there is no characteristic radiation as K shell energy itself is 70 kiloelectron volt. Between 80 to 150 kVp, characteristic radiations contribute to about 10 to 28% of the useful X-ray beam. Above 150 kVp, the contribution of characteristic radiation decreases and again becomes negligible above 300 kVp. This is a diagram that shows amalgamation of the Bremsstrahlung continuous spectrum of X-ray energies, which consists of high energy radiation as well as low energy parts. And in between, there are spikes of characteristic radiation, alpha spikes and beta spikes. We have understood about phenomena of production of X-rays, but how do we get this image of X-rays that we normally get from a doctor or a diagnostic center? We will go through what happens when X-rays pass through our body and how do we get to see an image actually. When an X-ray is performed, a uniform beam of X-rays passes from the X-ray tube to the patient. Here, inside the patient, the X-ray beam gets modulated and the exiting beam has a pattern of intensities which carries information about the tissue structure of the patient. This pattern is called the invisible image. X-ray films contain photosensitive agents. The most common photosensitive agent is silver bromide. Pure silver bromide crystals are very stable and do not undergo any chemical breakdown. But crystals that have been exposed to X-rays, in them the process of reduction is accelerated when a reducing agent is added. So, these exposed films are processed in an automatic developer and automatic processor, wherein they undergo the process of development, fixation, washing, and drying, and finally we get the image printed in a hard copy. So this ends the phenomena of X-ray production and how we get an image on an X-ray film. Now we proceed to the second part of the lecture, that is computed radiography, computed tomography or CT. X-rays is a 2D image of a 3D object. This projection causes superimposition of internal structures. Exact anatomic relationships and position are indeterminate on X-rays. So radiologists need excessive training to extrapolate these 3D information from a 2D data. However, with the advent of CT in 1970s, many of these limitations were overcome. CT is actually acquiring multiple X-ray views of an object, performing mathematical operations on digital data so as to form a stack of images. These can then be reconstructed to provide exquisitely stained, detailed anatomy. New rendering techniques enable productive exploitation of vast amount of data available to us. And we have progressed from 300 seconds for one slice in 1972 to 0.005 seconds for one slice in 2005. and even advancements are already going on. Generations of CT scanners have been earliest generation scanners in that the movement of X-ray tube and detectors was not linked to each other. By 1990s, we had a slip ring technology which allowed continuous movement of the tube as well as detectors and the patient table. Helical or spiral CT scanning then came into vogue, which allowed increased volume coverage, and so angiography became possible. The recent one that we have is a multi-detector row CT technology, which allows to use multiple set of detector rows for the same X-ray output. Now, the one figure that is shown in the slide shows a cut open gantry. The one that we see in the CT scan centers, it has been opened up to show you that there is an X-ray tube, and at the other end there is an arc of detectors present, and this moves through the patient, taking slice by slice all the information that is there inside. Next, we come to CT tubes. CT tubes are similar to X-ray tubes. They work on the same principles. However, they require large continuous exposure times at higher kV and MAs. CT tubes should have heavy-duty rotating anode, a high thermal capacity, smaller focal spot for better resolution, should be air-cooled so that they can take up currents approximately up to 600 MAs. So there were technical advances in the CT tubes. CT tubes now use rotating envelope X-ray tube, wherein the anode plate forms the outer part of the tube housing and it is in direct contact with the cooling oil. Heat dissipation rates of approximately 5 million heat units per minute are achieved with this method, and so high power scans in rapid succession can be performed. Other features of the tube design are as flashed on the slide. Another point of CT tubes is the Z-axis flying focal spot. What happens there is that there is a central rotating cathode. It uses electromagnetic deflection system to shape and position the electron beam at a specific point on the anode. This is the principle behind the Z-axis flying focal spot used in most advanced 64-slice CT systems. In a typical clinical operation, an X-ray tube usually delivers approximately 2 into 10 to the power 11 X-rays per second to the patient. Detection of X-rays in the CT scanner is done by multiple rows of detectors in multi-slice CT. There are 4 companies which are in vogue with the CT scanners manufacture, that is GE, Philips, Siemens and Toshiba, and they have different designs and different architecture of their scanners as flashed on the slide. The detection of X-rays in CT scanners is not by films, as I was explaining in X-rays. Here we use special detectors like phosphors, scintillating ceramics, or pressurized xenon gas. These ultimately produce an electric current or voltage. Electronic amplifiers condition the signal. Analog to digital converters thereafter convert it into a digital number. Now we have finished with X-rays production, image formation in X-rays, and image formation in CT. Coming on to the topic of current discussion, coronavirus or COVID-19 disease. The picture of coronavirus that is being flashed on the TV and news and media these days looks very pretty, almost like this. However, coronavirus actually is not like this. This is the electron micrograph picture of coronavirus. The name coronavirus was coined in 1968. It was derived from the corona-like or crown-like morphology observed in these viruses on electron microscope. These viruses belong to the family Coronaviridae, established in 1975 by International Committee on taxonomy of viruses. These are enveloped positive strand RNA viruses. They contain internal helical RNA protein nucleocapsid surrounded by envelope containing glycoproteins. The spike glycoprotein or glycoprotein S. This forms large glycosylated peplomers. These give the characteristic crown-like or spiky appearance to the coronaviruses. This is a schematic diagram of structure of COVID-19 virus, which shows the nucleocapsid containing the nucleus in the RNA and the membrane with multiple proteins transpassing through it. The specific feature of coronavirus is the spike glycoprotein, which gives it the spiky structure. Lessons from SARS and MERS. This is not the first time that we have had an epidemic disease from coronavirus. Two times prior, we have been hit by it in 2003 and 2012. In 2003, a coronavirus was identified as the cause of first pandemic of the new millennium in Guangdong province of China, with the clinical presentation of rapid progressive pneumonia. The clinical syndrome was called severe acute respiratory syndrome. It infected 8,422 cases, claiming 916 lives. The outbreak was contained and no instance of SARS has been reported since 2003. Similarly, MERS or Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, another outbreak due to coronavirus occurred in Middle East in 2012. MERS virus was identified in sputum of a Saudi Arabian patient presenting with pneumonia and had acute kidney injury in 2012. This disease infected 2,492 patients and claimed 858 lives. This is the picture of the current COVID-19 outbreak as taken on 19th February 2020, showing the prevalence of cases at that time. However, this ongoing outbreak of pneumonia is associated with a novel coronavirus known as SARS coronavirus 2. It was reported initially in Wuhan, Hubei province of China in December 2019. In the following weeks and months, as all of us know, the infection has spread from China to other countries of the world as well. January 30, WHO declared it as an outbreak, a public health emergency of international concern, PHEIC. And on February 12, WHO named the disease caused by novel coronavirus as Coronavirus Disease 2019 or COVID-19. The epidemiology of the disease is described as follows. On the basis of current data, it is estimated that COVID-19 may have initially been hosted in bats. Thereafter, the transmission to humans must have occurred via pangolin or other such wild animals sold at Huanan Seafood Market. Subsequent human-to-human transmission occurred. Now, as we know, transmission is through droplets, contacts, and fomites. Fomites means the objects that we touch in our day-to-day life, like doorknob, phones, our keychains, etc. The median incubation period means that the time a person takes from infection to presentation of symptoms is 1 to 3 days. However, it may range from 0 to 24 days. Also, the patient may not develop any symptoms and he may remain asymptomatic, whereas he can potentially transmit the disease from one person to the other. The clinical symptoms are non-specific, just like common cold: cough, fever, fatigue, myalgia, diarrhea, and nausea. Few uncommon symptoms include headache and hemoptysis. Hemoptysis is blood in the sputum. Patient may also remain asymptomatic, as I just mentioned. The problem that we have is with elderly. because elderly population with comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, or lung disease, they are more likely to have respiratory failure due to alveolar damage. Rapid progression to organ dysfunction, ARDS, acute cardiac or kidney injury, and also death can occur. How do we diagnose this? Diagnosis is with lab findings. There will be reduced blood cells, white blood cells, red blood cells, and raised acute clinical markers like C reactive protein. Current diagnosis criteria is based on a history of exposure or contact with COVID-19 patient or travel history in last 14 days, along with symptoms of upper respiratory tract infection like fever, cough, and a positive real-time RT-PCR, that is reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction, using a respiratory sample, that is nasopharyngeal swab. Then comes the role of chest X-ray and CT. What are the features of COVID-19 on chest X-ray and CT? Some common findings are as listed on the slide. They can be ground glass opacities, consolidation, peripheral airspace opacities, diffuse lung disease, or other features like pleural effusion, pneumothorax, and subcutaneous emphysema. Over the next few slides, I'll try and make this simple to understand. This is the X-ray and this is the CT of the first initial report that came from China and patients getting affected with breathlessness. We can see that there are some ill-defined opacities in both lung fields wherein the arrows are pointing, and on CT, a faint opacity like this is seen wherein the lung vessels are not obscured. So this is what I was referring to ground glass opacity. Ground glass opacity means that there is an opacity in the lung field which does not obscure the lung parenchymal vessels. It is difficult to appreciate on X-ray, but on coronal reformatted CT, it is very easily seen that these are patchy, irregular, ill-defined, non-demarcated lesions. Two more examples of such things so that ground glass opacity can be easily appreciated by you. Second example of ground glass opacity in left lower zone where the arrow is pointing. And the coronal reformat CT also shows these ill-defined patchy opacities. Another one showing ground glass opacities, but this time they are much more widespread in both lung lobes and in all the segments. Multifocal subsegmental consolidations. Consolidations actually mean that the ground glass opacities have progressed and now they are obscuring the lung parenchymal blood vessels. Pleural effusion. On this X-ray, it is easy to appreciate that there is an opacity on the right side which is not there on the left side, and it is causing a meniscus-like appearance on the right side. At the same time, the right hemidiaphragm is not visible. The left hemidiaphragm is well delineated. This is an example of a right side pleural effusion. Next, we come to pneumothorax. It is difficult to appreciate, but try and see this faint line where the arrow is pointing. This just shows that the lung or the pleural cavity has been filled with air where there are no lung markings, and the lung is actually compressed due to the presence of air in the lung cavity. Now this slide, it almost appears that a small child has scribbled across the X-ray film. It is not so. This appearance is characteristic of subcutaneous emphysema. This means that the air, while ventilation or a complication of it, air has entered into the subcutaneous tissues of the patient. After seeing the findings of COVID-19 on X-ray and CT, we must know that when we can order X-ray and when we can order CT. For this, we need to know the pros and cons of both the modalities. X-rays are easy. They are portable. Smaller machine is involved. Portable machines give us the ease of moving the machine from one place to other, especially in ICUs or COVID wards. These are easily available and less expensive. The disinfection of the machine is easy, and so infection control and spread from one place to another can be effectively handled. The disadvantages of X-ray include superimposition of structures, non-specific findings in the initial stages, and limited resolution of anatomic detail. CT has the advantage that it is easy to perform, it is fast, it can assess disease severity and course. For this, the American Radiology Association has come with a classification called CORADS or COVID Radiological Classification. This classification is given on CT findings and I will detail them on next slide. Anatomic detail is superb in CT. But CT at the same time has disadvantages like limited availability. In institutions where there is only one CT machine available, it is very difficult to do CT for a COVID-19 patient because disinfection is a problem. CT at the same time needs trained personnel to perform, trained personnel to interpret the findings. Decontamination procedures are very difficult. This is the CORADS classification which I was mentioning about. CORADS 1 means normal CT. CORADS 2 refers to abnormalities that are consistent with infections other than COVID-19, like tuberculosis or pneumonia. CORADS 3 refers to indeterminate etiology when we do not know whether COVID-19 is present or not. However, if we have typical ground glass opacities in both lobes of lung in an unsharp peripheral with basal predominance manner, we go into CORADS 4 category. Typical COVID-19 infections go into CORADS 5 category, and a patient who is PCR positive COVID-19 is taken as CORADS 6 category. With this, I have come to the end of my lecture, explaining to you the X-ray production, image formation, CT image formation, few important points about current COVID-19 pandemic, how do we diagnose on X-ray and CT, what is the role of radiology in current COVID pandemic situation, which brings me to the very important control of the pandemic. Effective prevention and control measures include early detection, diagnosis, treatment, and quarantine to block human-to-human transmission. At the same time, reducing secondary infections among those which are close contacts and most importantly, healthcare workers. For this, we must all follow these simple, easy steps. Disinfect surfaces around your home and work. Wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap and water as frequently as possible. Sneeze or cough, cover your mouth, and of course, maintain social distancing. I thank you all for your time and attention. Questions, if any, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ishar. Now I would request our coordinator, Budhendra and Vijay if you must have some question, you can ask on behalf of students and participants. Please.
Yes, ma'am. There is a first question from Isita Chatterjee. Why
Okay,
in
sir.
characteristic radiation the K cell electron first removed, whereas it has a larger binding energy than L or M cells?
Than L or M cells. Why is the predilection for K shell electrons?
Question is K cell electron. Why in
Why is it
characteristics?
first removed?
Why in characteristics radiation the K cell electron first removed, whereas it has
Okay,
a
sir.
larger binding energy than L or M cells?
Okay. Characteristic radiation, by definition only, it is produced only when K shell electron is removed. It is not whether it has a predilection for removal. Characteristic radiation can be produced only when K shell electron is removed from the atom. Removal of L or M shell electrons does not lead to production of characteristic radiation. So this is the basic definition of characteristic radiation, wherein K shell electron has to be handled. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am. Now the second question from
Sir.
Sulagna Mohanty. Why it is said to be characteristic X-rays? If we
Okay.
know all the symptoms, why it is not possible to make vaccine?
Right.
There is two
Okay.
question from Sulagna Mohanty.
Right, sir. So first question, why is it called characteristic radiation? Because
Yes.
the word characteristic means that it is pertaining to a particular element, particular cell, particular form. So characteristic, that English obvious meaning is taken and it is named as characteristic radiation because this radiation, this energy of 59 kiloelectron volt is typical only for tungsten atom. Similarly, if we use molybdenum as it is used in mammography in the place of cathode, in place of tungsten, we use molybdenum in mammography. Therein, the characteristic radiation has only energy of 17 to 19 kiloelectron volts. But that is characteristic of the molybdenum atom only. So when we move from atom to atom, their characteristic radiations vary. It is named as characteristic radiation because it is typical for that atom only. Question number 1. Question number 2, why is vaccine not being made? Because when we know the origin and everything we know about the virus.
Yes, ma'am.
Now the problem is with coronaviruses or any viruses is that they mutate. When they came in 2003, when they came in 2012, and now when we have them in 2020, the genome varies. And the proteins that are expressed on the envelope, those also vary. So when we are making vaccines, which all of you must already be knowing that they are in the pipeline, the vaccines are aimed at some membrane glycoprotein which are essential to the living of the viruses. But as you know, any drug or vaccine has its own time taken to go through the animal trials, to go through the human trials, and then it is FDA approved and comes into the market for common population use. During this period, the virus keeps mutating. It does not know that a vaccine is going to be made, so it keeps on formulating itself, and that's why no vaccine is 100% effective. Vaccines are being made. We were not aware of this mutated virus. China and WHO claims that they have shared the genes with the rest of the world, and all of us are in the process of making a vaccine. But from the time we get a virus to the time we get vaccines, there is a stipulated period of incubation that will happen. So I guess that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am. Our next question is, does the coronavirus attack on bones? This question is asked by Santosh Kumar, and he is from our student, Physics Central University of South Bihar.
Right, sir. Coronavirus attacks on the immune mechanism as such. What it does is, it breaks into all the cells. Now, as you know, the body is made up of different kinds of cells. Even our bones are made up of cells. So it is not that coronavirus is partial to bones or partial to brain. There are some viruses like neuroencephalitis viruses which have a predilection for going to the brain parenchyma. However, coronavirus does not have any kind of this predilection. It enters into every kind of cell. But the problem with the respiratory system is that when the coronavirus attacks the respiratory system, it breaks the acini, or the smallest unit of respiration, and decreases the surface area that is available for gaseous exchange. So whatever data is available to us till now, we know that the more problems or the main cause of morbidity and mortality due to current COVID-19 is from respiratory system problems. So do they affect the bones? Yes, they do.
Ma'am, there is another question from my colleague, Dr. Nitin Chandra. So I am giving mic to him and he will ask
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, ma'am. I was a little bit doubtful about this way of testing a clinical trial of testing some medicine. So
Okay,
generally,
sir.
what we do is some placebo effect testing. So there are
Mm-hmm.
two groups. One group is given the medicine, and other group is given the placebo.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, the group which is given placebo, I
Sir.
mean, is it ethical? Because disease which may take your life if you give them placebo, is that thing ethical?
I got your question, sir. Sir, what happens in development of any drugs? There are multiple kind of trials which are possible. One is single blind, second is double blind, wherein the patient and the doctor does not know who gets the vaccine and who gets the placebo. And also there are randomized control trials in which the whole population is sometimes given the vaccine, like we did in case of fluorine, with when fluorine was added to the drinking water and the fluorosis was problem was solved. So there are multiple types of trials which can be done, and for this to get for the drugs companies to get this kind of trial permission, there is ethical committee always constituted, which takes care of this kind of problems, that who gets the drug and who gets the placebo. Consents are taken from the participants and the doctors who are doing it, and I think that is the way to proceed. And yes, when you're saying that if there is a drug which can help a patient, and whether to give that drug or to give placebo, if the patient gives a consent to enter into that trial, he knows that he may get the drug and he may get the placebo. But those things are better left with ethical committees and drug control companies, and so that's about it.
Ma'am,
Anything?
there is one last question, and actually
Sure,
there are
sir.
several questions. So remaining question I will
Good.
send you by email. But
Okay, sir.
I am including one more question from my student.
Okay.
His name is Arjil, and he's
Okay.
asking which technique among MRI and CT scan is most accurate to detect cancerous tumors in human body.
Cancerous tumors in human body?
Yes. Which technique is
Can
good, MRI or CT scan?
MRI or CT? Okay. As I told, in X-ray and CT, there are multiple advantages and disadvantages of each technique. Similarly, CT and MRI, they also stand separate from each other. Although most of the people think that there is a step from X-ray to CT to MR. However, that does not stand true. All the radiological modalities are complementary to each other. In some cases, one may be better, in some cases, the other may be better. As compared to CT and MRI for head and neck, pelvis, and brain, MRI is always better because it gives much more resolution and much more anatomical detail of these complex structures. In these areas, bones cause a lot of artifact in CT. Whereas CT has specific advantages in cases of vertebral column problems, in cases of trauma. As far as tumors are concerned, the first step in generally in any tumors is to do the staging, whether the tumor has spread to the rest of the places. So in that case, we can do a chest and abdomen CT to look for any spread to lungs or to the abdomen. However, it depends on the specific type of tumor where our next study which we should take, CT or MRI, that depends on the type of the tumor. If it's a brain tumor, definitely an MRI. If it's a lung tumor, CT can also do the tune. Yes, sir.
So, Dean Saab,
So, thank you, Ishta. If there is no further questions, I would request our coordinator to give the vote of thanks.
I would like to thank Dr. Ishta Rajput for giving such an informative and interesting seminar. And I hope everyone, our audience, student and colleagues, they enjoyed from this talk. And there are several questions, so I will send these questions through email, and as I will get response from Dr. Rajput, then I will send to everyone. I would also like to thank my colleagues who were in this committee, particularly Dean Saab, and Budhen sir, Rohit sir, and Nitin Chandra, Lakwinder Saab. So thanks to everyone who helped me for organizing such a wonderful webinar. And also I would like to announce about those who want this science lecture series certificates. Those candidates who want this certificate, please write your name in this chat box. And as Budhen sir announced earlier, the certificate will be given to those candidates who have attended 70% of this science lecture series. And this science lecture series will continue till July end. So we will check those candidates who have attended 70% till July end. We will provide the certificate to them. So please write your name. So thank you, everyone. So now we are going to close.
Thank you. Thank you, Ishita. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. See you.
Bye.